Hello everyone, welcome back. I am glad you're here. Today we're going to be talking about Springfield Armory versus Tisas. And as the video is titled, this is a close competition. Now, if you guys have watched my Kimber versus Colt and my Colt versus Tisas and all these guns that I own that I'm sort of comparing them in my experience with them going back 15 years and these different brands, you guys know that boy, I'm a big Tisas fan. They pretty much smoke everybody. But in the sort of basic, low-cost, quality-built GI 1911 category, there's almost nobody competing with Tisas in my opinion. Now, Rock Island's fine, but as I've said in other videos, the spec is just a little different. They look a little funny. They're just, the quality's not there. The consistency's not there for me. Now, you have the Gearsons. I've not tried the Gearsons, but there's a whole bunch of guns out there now, which I call race to the bottom guns, right? It feels like everybody's just trying to do it cheaper. And I just feel like Tisas stands alone because they're all forged, built right, reliable. These are good guns, and they're priced so well. But in that low-cost factory 1911 category, I feel like the number one direct competitor to Tisas, who is a very close second for only one reason, we'll talk about that in a minute, that's Springfield Armory, man. So we're going to talk about this today. I want to compare these two. Now, just so you know, on the table, the only Springfield I have is my Old Faithful. This one I have had for more than 10 years. I don't even know how many rounds are through it. It's more than 10,000. I know that for certain. I am on my third barrel, which I just did recently. This gun's been rebuilt 3 or 4 times now. Boy, you should have seen it before I rebuilt it last time. She was thoroughly worn out. I have carried this gun inside the waistband for years, and it has remained just a faithful thumper, man. This thing just hasn't quit, and it's got a lot of sentimental value for me because I really cut my teeth on Springfields, and this one in particular. Now, this one's been modified, so I can't do a quote-unquote out-of-the-box review, but listen, this one started its life as a regular old mil-spec, which looked dramatically like this guy right here. And then also, this is not the only Springfield I've owned. I've owned several others. I've owned 2 loadeds. I've owned 2 TRPs. I've owned a GI. So we'll get into this. I've got a pretty good feel on Springfield. And as well, I've worked on a ton of Springfields. And even to take it a step further, I've got several friends who own current Springfield offerings. And I've got to handle them and, really get to know them. And so we're going to talk about Tisas versus Springfield because, look, man, these are 2 very, very close competitors. These are solid guns. So let's get this out of the way. You guys know I am a hardcore Tisas fan. I'm pretty close to just going ahead and getting a Tisas tramp stamp. You guys just watch. Yeah, that's how hard of a shill I am for them. So, no, listen, you guys know I love them. My big 3 that I'm always going to measure these things by are build quality, quality of parts, reliability. If I do my part and I do proper mag, springs, and lube, the manufacturer's got to take care of those other 3. And these Tisas guns, nobody's doing it like they are, man. They're all forged, John Moses Browning spec. They've got the big 3 in spades, and these guns run like sewing machines, and they're just so affordable. They're so affordable. So you guys already know how I feel about these. That's about all I'm going to say about Tisas in large. I really want to focus on Springfield and why I think, I'm going to go ahead and say this right now, Springfield, if I couldn't buy Tisas, Springfield is easily the very next choice I would be making if I didn't want to buy one of these. So we're going to set the Rand copy over there, and we're going to focus on Springfield for the majority of this video. So Springfield has not got a lot of airtime on my channel, but I want you guys to know my first 1911 ever, which I actually have a picture of, was a Springfield GI, and I didn't know anything about 1911s except for I held one once and I thought I gotta have one of those. So, and obviously, I grew up playing games and, playing like the old Medal of Honor games. They had 1911s, right? And so I had to have one. The Springfield GI was my first, and man, I loved that gun. I cut my teeth on 1911s on that pistol. I shot it God knows how many times. That's back when ammo was real cheap. I mean, you could go in the store and get a box of 45 for I think like $9 or $10, maybe $12. I shot that gun a lot. I carried a lot. And this is back before I really knew anything about like the history and all the springs and the mags and the lube and the parts and anything, man. I just knew I loved that pistol. And I really learned pistol craft as a end user of the pistol on that gun. Now, at one point, I had a pile of Springfields. I've got some pictures we'll roll in as I'm talking here. But again, I had the GI. I had a stainless loaded. I had the coated loaded. I had 2 TRPs. I had the bull barrel version, which I hated. I sold that within a month. Then I had the proper bushing barrel version, which I ran that gun hard, man. I beat the brakes off that pistol. I think for a short time, I borrowed a range officer, which I really liked. That was a great gun. And then I've had 2 Springfield mil specs. And that's what this gun here on the table started its life out as. So I got this gun, gosh, I don't even know how many years ago. 12 years ago, 13 years ago. I really couldn't tell you. And it started its life out as a mil spec, which you'll see in the picture here. And I carried it in its stock configuration for years. Once again, shot the brakes off it, man. In fact, the first barrel, I really wish I had a picture of this. The first barrel that came with it, the first third of the rifling was gone. That's how much I shot that gun. So this mil spec, man, I just, again, cut my teeth on it, carried it a lot. I actually sold it to my dad for a spell, and then I bought it back from him. And that's where I was really getting good at customizing and working on 1911. So at the time, I rebuilt this 1911 and installed a lot of these parts that are still on it. I've got a blended Ed Brown beaver tail. Everything on this pistol is Ed Brown. The mainspring housing, which is blended here on the back. I did a extended thumb safety. Obviously going for the Musoc kind of vibe. Ed Brown hammer. I did the Harrison U-notch rear sight, which, gosh, this thing's so beat up. I've dropped it and just, this gun's been through so much. It was Cerakoted at one point, and I carried it so much that the Cerakote, I had worn it off the back strap here and off the front strap and like some of the controls, and they were like rusted over the top of the Cerakote. This gun got used, man. It got really used. And now it's kind of been rebuilt finally with the bead blasted blue. A lot of the parts that I hand fitted, I just left them on there because they're fitted so well. And then I recently, a couple weeks ago, installed a new Swenson barrel and bushing, and this is really tight lockup. So she's got a third barrel on her. So this gun has been incredibly faithful, incredibly reliable for me. And again, the internals, the slide and frame are stock. The first 2 barrels that I put in there were, the first barrel was just the stock one that came with it. The second one I just bought on Midway, just a regular old Springfield barrel, no fitting, no special bushing, threw it in, utterly reliable. And this barrel was a Swenson. Just by luck of the draw, guys. I dropped it in 0% fitting, absolutely perfect fit. Like the rear of the slide is not sitting proud. Like, couldn't have gone better. It's absolutely perfect. So anyway, I've got a lot of experience with Springfields. I really cut my teeth on them. So back in the day, Springfield used to be the affordable option for a good gun. Let me qualify that, because back then there were like the ATIs and the Rock Islands, but man, back then those guns were really trash, man. Like terrible, terrible, terrible guns. Now I know some people probably have them from 13, 15 years ago, and you're going to say it's great. I'm just telling you my experience with those. Those are the most poorly fit, out of spec, unreliable guns that break more than anything I've ever seen. They're terrible. And so the Springfield offered the mil spec, which was just your good old Parkerized GI 1911. And man, they were like $500. Like, excellent price for what you get, you know? And a lot of people use them as, you know, platforms to customize and all those good things. And so these guns came set up really well, like good solid GI triggers. Granted, most of the parts are MIM, right? The frame, the slide, and the barrel are forged properly, but the rest of them's pretty much MIM. But I've never had a problem with Springfield's MIM parts. And moving into modern day Springfield, it hasn't changed that much. Now, their line has expanded a little bit in that they have more options for more price brackets. So right now, you now have the Springfield Armory mil spec Defender, which is $580, which is still, man, a really good value. It hasn't gone up much in price at all over all these years. And they are still the good old mil spec, man. You get a Parkerized gun. Now, I don't know, you know, the quality of parts. I will say, here's one thing, and again, guys, I don't know for certain if this is true, because sometimes brands play a little game here, right? They'll get their stuff made overseas and then shipped over here, and if there's a certain like percentage that's made here, then they can say made in the USA. I don't know if Springfield's playing those games, but here's what I know. My pistol says made in Brazil, okay? The new ones all say made in the USA. I hope that's true, because if that's true, that's fantastic. Now, it does concern me because I asked the question, how are they making guns in the USA for only $80 more than they were 15 years ago? That makes me worried, because that could mean, not saying it does mean, it could mean the parts are way lower quality. I hope that's not true. I hope I'm wrong. But overall, to this day, you still got the good old mil spec available in the Springfield line. Now, in the old days, the next step up from there would have been the loaded, which is basically like your more custom feature kind of gun, but, you know, they're largely still a parts box gun with minor fitting maybe in the thumb safety, right? They weren't super fitted guns. They're mostly, they got some comfort features on them. And then the next jump up from that would have been the TRP. Now you have a little bit more options at different price brackets. So today now you have the next step up from the mil spec being the Garrison. Now I think the Garrisons are really, really good pistols, because basically you have nicer finishes. You've got some of those, you know, nicer sights, subjective, nicer sights, you know, grips, beaver tails, hammers, sort of the more comfort feature rich guns for a pretty affordable price. Right now I'm looking at one for $737 on Midway USA, which is, listen, for what you're getting, respectable, not bad at all. And I've handled a couple of these Garrisons. They're well done. It's still what I would have expected from Springfield all those years ago. Now they do still weirdly offer the loaded, which is visually the only difference I can see between a Garrison and a loaded is an ambidextrous safety for another $150. There's got to be more going on there, right? Maybe some finishes or barrel fitting. I don't really know. But, you know, long story short, you have a range of options. But I want to focus on the mil spec, because really this is the crux of the video. I think the mil spec for a GI gun that's built right, that's, you know, very reliable, their reputation is solid, the mil spec I think is the closest competition to the Tisas guns. So comparing these two in the big three category, first of all, build quality. Now the build quality on Springfields I would say is very close to Tisas. Now I think Tisas is still a little bit better, but I mean not by much. The Springfield guns barrel fit is still great from the ones that I've inspected and gotten to shot. Recent offerings going all the way back 15 years as well. The triggers are usually a nice standard GI trigger. Slide to frame fit, you know, Tisas is going to be better, but for a GI gun, who cares? That's not really super important. Overall, I think the build quality, they're pretty equal. I still think Tisas has a slight edge, but not by much. And the only reason I say that is I do find the fitment on Tisas to be just like 10% better. The next one is where you start to see a delta emerge, and that is in the quality of parts. Now, I gotta say, Springfield are still using MIM parts. Your barrels, your slides, your frames are going to be forged. Pretty much everything else is likely MIM stuff. Maybe they're hammers, I'm not really sure. But it's kind of public knowledge. It's no secret. They're still using MIM parts. But here's the deal. I do think forged is better and Tisas gets the edge there. But I have to say, full credit, out of all the Springfields I have owned and personally worked on, Springfield has, without a doubt, the best MIM parts that I have ever worked on. They're just really consistent, and I've never seen them break. I'm not saying they never have. I'm sure some have had bad luck. My experience with Springfield parts has been great. So much so that, like I said, my second barrel that I had in this gun, it was just a regular old Springfield barrel. I have bought aftermarket Springfield parts, magazine releases, and thumb safeties for years. Never had a problem. Several bushings, in fact. I have purchased a ton of Springfield Armory parts. I've never thought a thing about it. So, yes, edge to Tisas. However, Springfield's still pretty solid, and it's not something I would really worry about. And then reliability, 100% tie. I don't ever have problems with Springfields. Man, the two loadeds I've owned, the TRPs, the two mil specs, the GI, these guns run. And that is something that I have always admired about Springfield, is these are proper John Moses Browning spec guns. Now, I know every brand's just a little different in some little ways, but guys, these Springfields, I have rebuilt at least 10 of them. I know this gun right here is full of Ed Brown parts. I've built some that are full of EGW and Wilson parts. I have put Nighthawk parts in. You name it. These guns are very, very adaptable. They're really, really good spec. And again, they're fantastic building platforms because of that. They're just not these guns that are so far out of spec and weird. And really, I got to say this too. Across all the models I just listed, GI, mil-spec, loaded, TRP, they're all so consistent in their sizes. You don't have like this model's pretty solid, but then you go one model up and they're suddenly super weird. The dimensions, the specs are so consistent across everything that I have tried with these guys. It's satisfying. It's really nice to see a company that's so consistent. I will also say a huge benefit for Springfield, this one in particular, this mil-spec, has been the least magazine-sensitive firearm I have ever used. And I mean, like, guys, you name a magazine brand, I have used it in this gun over these 10, 12 years, however long I've owned it. The gun runs everything. In fact, a lot of the delay that I had in learning about magazine importance was because of this gun, because it would just eat anything, man. Like, I have such a smattering of magazines because this used to be the main gal. This thing ran everything. I mean, I have pictures. I'll throw them in if I have them. But I know I had pictures in the past where me and my buddies would go out to the range and we would like mark the bottom of our magazines, but then we would just all load them and there would be just a mountain of mixed mags. And everybody would be out there with their Springfield Armory slab sides just going ham bone, absolutely having a blast. And I really think that speaks to just how well done these guns are. And I've always appreciated that these guns are not picky. Now, I know the 1911 as a platform is generally picky, but for whatever reason, Springfields are, at least in my experience, not nearly as picky as some. Now, I still use Springfield mags. I stick to them. But, man, I've got Wilsons. I've got, Kimbers and Checkmates and Mechgars and I don't even know how many. I couldn't tell you. I have probably 80 magazines, to be honest. I don't really know. The majority of them I don't use anymore. So I've got even one stack of magazines, probably 10 of them. I don't even know what they are. Like, they're just rando, bargain bin magazines, and they run in this gun. So when you compare the Springfield to the Tisas, they are such a close match in the big three that matter to me: build quality, quality of parts, and reliability. So why would you buy a Springfield over a Tisas? Well, me personally, I wouldn't, because these guns are much closer to a legit Colt spec gun. They've got better parts. I think they're slightly better built, and overall, I just prefer them, especially in the GI world. This is a much more legit, old school Colt looking gun than anything Springfield offers. However, here are some upsides to Springfield. Yes, they still have MIM parts, but for those of you who really care about buying an American-made pistol, here you go. And I think these guns are great. I really do. If you're really hung up on the turkey thing, fine. Go buy a Springfield. That you're not going to have a lesser gun. Technically, the parts are a little subpar compared to Tisas, but guys, I just have to call this competition between these two a tie. What you get in the Springfield is an American gun. Now, granted, you're going to pay almost twice the money as a Tisas, but tax and everything out the door, about $600 for a solid 1911. That's nothing to complain about. That's really, really good. And these guns, I would trust them. They are fantastic. Now, my buddy who has one of the recent offerings from Springfield, he's got a new model Garrison and blued. Man, he shot the lights out of it, and he says it just runs like a sewing machine. And the people that I know who even have the new Springfields, they're running. They're working. So, listen, that's my view on Springfield. I actually really love them. If Tisas did not exist, I would be still both feet jumping on a Springfield all day. And if you guys think I shill hard for Tisas, you should have heard me before when I was a hardcore Springfield guy. I was every bit this passionate and obstinate and just bullheaded about Springfield because they are objectively that good. I just have a real love for Springfield. It's what I cut my teeth on, and I think even now they're doing a great job. So guys, that is my thoughts on Springfield versus Tisas. I'm going to call it a really close match, almost a tie. Springfield's more expensive, slightly lesser quality parts, but at the end of the day, both of these guns, they work, and they're really well done. And if you really care about getting an American-made gun, you can't go wrong with Springfield. So there you go. I would love to hear what you guys think. I'm sure people are going to be surprised at this. I'm sure they thought I was going to say Tisas is way better and all this. Not really, man. Springfield's more expensive, and yeah, there's MIM parts in there, but honestly, Springfield freaking rocks. Like, in fact, if I was going to just go ahead and do this, I'm not going to make a video on this because it would feel redundant. Springfield versus Colt. I'm going Springfield. Like, hand over fist, man. That you're going to get a gun, I think, most of the time that's going to work. That's going to be way better than what Colt's offering right now. So I think Springfield is a heavy hitter, and they are a safe place to put your money, in my opinion. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you think. If you're not already following me over on X and Instagram, links are in the bio, and you can also follow us and support the channel directly on Patreon. We always appreciate that. A really fun community there. And other than that, guys, I appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.